What's up, my wizards? Dev. SBMTG down there. We like magic cards and all that stuff, and today we're going to keep it breezing through this analysis of the Dominaria leaks that came out last week. In case you haven't heard, living under a rock, big old Dominaria leak last week where like 140 cards were spoiled. And we've already done the white cards and the blue cards. I'll leave links in the description in case you're just joining us, but for now I'm going to go ahead and jump into these black cards without too much introduction, other than to say that a lot of these black cards look a little bit jankier to me than some of the fare we've gone through so far, but maybe not bad. That's not to say that they look bad. They just sort of, in a way, more than the other two colors, challenge our perceptions of what a good card is. And I love when cards do that. So black's a really interesting color, and there's a lot of stuff here that looks like garbage at first glance. And you think about some applications and you're like, oh, well, that might be really cool. Starting with Rexy and Scriptures. This is a card you probably already read. It's gotten some hype this week because they officially spoiled it. So even people who are keeping away from the leaks have seen this card, more than likely. But it's 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a saga. When it enters the battlefield, it gets its first lore counter. And when you put the counter on, you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. The creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Then, its second turn, when it gets a lore counter, you destroy all non-artifact creatures. That plays well together. And then, when you put the third lore counter on it, you sack it and exile all cards from opponents' graveyards. That is interesting. First of all, card's kind of cool because it does 3 very distinct things. It boosts the creature, it destroys all other creatures, basically, and then it hoses decks like God for his gift and maybe even control and stuff. If they're trying to like flip over a search for Escanta or something, I don't know, there's ways. And it exiles all eternalized creatures and stuff like that, scrap heap scroungers and such. So, there's some cool stuff about that last ability. The big con here is that if you need a Wrath right now, the card is terrible. And I mean, straight up bad. Like, there's a lot of situations where if you don't draw a Wrath, if you don't top deck a Wrath this turn, you're going to lose the game. So top decking this is really a feel-bad proposition. And it doesn't play super well against Gear Hulks. That's a real consideration. And also Pia tokens and Whirler Virtuoso and stuff. It doesn't play great against Scrap Heap Scrounger, Bomat Courier. I mean, there's a ton of creatures that this won't necessarily get off the board for you. And that's something to think about too. Although, I will say the creatures it doesn't play well against are the same creatures it plays well with. If you go 3rd turn Whirler Virtuoso, 4th turn Scriptures, and you put the counter on the Virtuoso, next turn you'll Wrath everything except for Virtuoso and its tokens. That's cool. The same trick works with Pianalar too, so that's awesome. So that looks nice, and it works. It plays alongside Scrap Heap Scrounger and Bomat Courier and Noxious Gear Hulk and all that stuff pretty well too. So, what it doesn't work well against, it at least works very well in the same deck with. So, I like that much about it. But almost certainly the best thing about the card, and you got to bring it up, is that a lot of Wraths don't let you do what this card does, Usually, if you're going to Wrath on curve, you pay your 4 or 5 mana on turn 5, you kill everything, and then you say go, and you give your opponent the chance to repopulate the board. Before you get a chance to do anything, you're tapped out. But not so with this thing. It's really cool that it gives you a chance to Wrath on turn 5, if you're doing it on curve, and still have mana. All of your mana, actually, to affect the board first. Usually the player who Wraths doesn't get to affect the board first after the Wrath. Usually you say go. But I will say, assuming that your opponent has a Wrath and knowing that your opponent has a Wrath are 2 very, very different things. And you're giving your opponent a full turn to, not drop their most important creature that they base that whole turn around, or protect their guys or whatever, put up shields. A whole turn to do that is kind of a lot. So I'm not really sure how great a suspend 1 Wrath is. More cons, by the way, I don't want to beat up on the card too much, but it doesn't kill Hazoret, it doesn't kill Rekindling Phoenix forever, or Scarab God forever, doesn't kill Ronus. I mean, anything with Indestructible or any sort of recursion ability, this won't really do much about, and those are the most important creatures in this entire format at present, at the very least. So, I don't know. Obviously it goes really good in a deck with a bunch of artifact creatures and stuff. We'll try to make it happen, but it's definitely not like the new Damnation. It's not like the big Black Wrath salvation that everyone's hoping for. It's probably better than Bantu's Last Reckoning on turn 4. And almost no other turn. If you draw, if you're going to draw this on turn 6 or Bantu's Last Reckoning on turn 6, I would rather draw Reckoning every time. Up next, though, this is Knight of Malice. It's the analog to Knight of Grace in white. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 human knight with first strike and hexproof from white. And it gets +1/+0 as long as anybody, including you, controls a white permanent. That's pretty sweet. I mean, I was saying about Knight of Grace, I think that Knight of Grace is the better one, all in all, because it has protection from Fatal Push, Moment of Craving, and Essence Extraction, Walk the Plank, blah, 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 Vraska's Contempt. There's a ton of things. Fatal Push being the most important one. Knight of Malice doesn't, but at least it does have protection from, Seal Away, the new Baffling End. And it's got protection from Baffling End itself, too, which was the new Silk Wrap. Journey to Nowhere, whatever. So, Oblivion Ring, whatever. It's got protection from all that kind of stuff. It's got protection from Cast Out, Ixalan's Binding, I guess, but note that it doesn't have protection from, Fumigate. So, there's cool things about it. Big Exile, white removal can't do anything about it. So, but Settle the Wreckage and Fumigate can, and those are still pretty important pieces. But all in all, end of the day, I'm not going to, say this card's bad. This card's obviously pretty good. A possible 2-mana 3/2 first strike hexproof from a color is very, very pushed and super relevant as well. But up next, here's a card I don't like. And I usually don't just come out and say that immediately, but here's Chainer's Torment right here. It's 4 mana, 3 and a black for a saga. When it comes into play, put a lore counter on it, and it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. When you put the second lore counter on it, on the next turn, it'll do that same thing, siphon 2 damage, and then when you put the third lore counter on it, you sack it and create an XX Black Nightmare Horror Creature token, where X is half your life total rounded up. It deals X damage to you. I don't necessarily like this at all. The first 2 turns it's in play, it doesn't affect the board or give you any kind of card advantage. It's only good looking even in some sort of black-red burn shell, or just a black drain shell of some kind. I could see it. But all in all, it looks pretty garbage to me. Even when you get the creature, it does a bunch of damage to you, and you don't get the creature until turn 6 at the very least. So depending on what your opponent's doing, they can just outright kill you. I don't know about this one, guys. Maybe it's better than I think it is, but I don't know. The way I'm evaluating it for the last week that I've been looking at it, the card gets worse and worse. Looking at least. So let me know if I'm just totally off base. That card looks quite bad. But anyway, up next is Fungal Infection. This is a card I like more than I should, I would say. This is just, it's got a terrible name too, Fungal Infection, but it's a black mana for an instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. This actually don't think is bad. I know I've already said that, but I just want to reiterate. I have a feeling that this is playable. It's, a possible 1 mana board advantage against a lot of played stuff. There's a bunch of X1s in this format right now. Or it's just a 1 mana removal piece against a 2 toughness attacker, which also, hello Ziggy, which also seems pretty cool to me. Or just kills a small dude and then blocks another guy. There's just a ton of ways that you could play this card. It's pretty sweet for just, the 1 mana. It sort of reminds me of something like Deadweight, or what is it, Disfigure? It's not Disfigure. I'll remember it. But anyway, just 1 black for, -2, essentially, which I do like a whole lot. I've always liked stuff like this, and possibly killing a guy and getting a creature. Again, that's board advantage. That is really valuable, especially for just 1 mana. It kills a Glintsleeve Siphoner, a Bomat Courier, an Earthshaker Kenra, a Champion of Wits. There's a bunch of stuff that people play that this can kill right now and leave you with a dude. So I don't know. I kind of think that it's awesome. I don't think it's going to see main board play, but I don't know. There's something I like a lot about this against aggro decks. Better than Skullduggery. Anyway, up next is another card that's getting a lot of talk so far. This is Lichs Mastery. This is 6 mana. That's a lot. 3 and 3 black for a legendary enchantment with hexproof. Check this text out, you guys. You can't lose the game. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lost, exile a permanent you control or a card from your hand or graveyard. When Lichs Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. Okay, so essentially when you run out of cards to discard or exile from your graveyard or permanents to exile, you will lose the game because you'll eventually have to exile Lichs Mastery. It'll be your only permanent on the battlefield. But in the whole time that it's on the battlefield, your opponent really cannot do much about this. There's Hour of Revelation, and there's not really a whole lot else. aside from just running your dudes into them as fast as you can and trying to force them to sacrifice their mastery. And 6 mana is a lot, 3 black is an awful lot on top of that, but once you get it in play, there's really, you are looking good, given that you have enough, life gain spells to draw a bunch of cards. And that's one thing you can do with it. It turns every, do nothing life gain spell in the format into a consideration. There's Renewed Faith, and I don't remember the name of it, that stupid thing that's 2 white and XX, maybe, and you gain X life, or maybe it's just 2 white and X, but anyways, Sanguine Sacrament, something dumb, but it turns cards like that into real serious considerations. It makes removal pieces like Moment of Craving and Essence Extraction and Vraska's Contempt just incredible cards that get you crazy card advantage and kill stuff. So I don't know. I could see this working out, especially in approach decks. That's what you got to mention. Everyone's talking about approach with this. Especially considering if you get this down before your approach, you will draw 7 cards when you play your approach, which is, it's unbreakable. That's pretty good. So there's just so much that I like about this. And there's even more dumb combinations, like Horizon Chimera. That's a thing. Just look at those 2 cards together real quick for a second, so do that. And then there's also, the fact that it works really well in Standard with cards like Fumigate. You get your Mastery down, then you'll Fumigate, and not only will you draw a bunch of cards, but, you'll wipe the board so they're less likely to make you sacrifice stuff to Mastery. So, I don't know, guys. There's something telling me this is a very real card, but it could also be jank. I was talking about that at the beginning of the video. It's hard to evaluate a lot of these black cards, but I think this one might seriously be on the real radar, on the real scale. So look out for Lich's Mastery. I'm brewing with it, so is everybody else in the brewing world right now, and it's looking like it's the real deal, you guys. So not gonna call any shots just yet, but I like Lich's Mastery a lot. But up next, here's another card to get hyped for. This is Rat Colony. It's 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/1 rat that gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control, and a deck can have any number of cards named Rat Colony. Look at that. That's pretty sweet, right? It's a new Relentless Rats. A fixed Relentless Rats, I might say. It's hard to say whether it's better or worse. It's got lower toughness, but that's pretty much where the bad stuff ends. It costs 1 less mana. It's not just each Relentless Rats, it's other rats you control. And there are rats in Standard right now, actually, if you Scryfall for that, or Gatherer for it, whatever search engine you use to look at Magic cards. I suggest Scryfall, or Magic Cards Info, but anyway, that's another subject. If you look at the rats in Standard, there were a few. And in Modern, we've got Pack Rat, which is just hilarious. So, I don't know, man. I could see this being, I don't know about real in Standard, but, at least really, really fun to play with, obviously. So, I don't know. We're definitely going to try and build. Oh, there's also, by the way, Thrumming Stone. I should point that card exists as well. But we're going to try to do something with this. There's obviously a fun budget Standard deck involving Rat Colony. And it's probably not just, 20 Swamp and 40 Rat Colony. I doubt that it's that. There's some cool stuff you can do with it. So, we play Vanquisher's Banner, maybe. I don't know. There's cool stuff. But moving on, here's Kazarov, Send Your Pure Blood. The Bloodline lives. It's 7 mana, 5 and 2 black for a 4/4 legendary vampire with flying. And whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, you put a +1/+1 counter on Kazarov. And also, if you want to, you can pay 4 mana, 3 and a red, to have Kazarov deal 2 damage to target creature. Look at that. It'll buff itself if you do that. So this costs 7 mana and will come nowhere near Standard. It just won't. But this is a pretty fun looking commander. If you want to build that black-red burn deck I was talking about. People do. I hear people talking about black-red burn all the time. I get comments about black-red burn in Standard, which doesn't make any sense. Alms and Vein is gone, but I guess Gonti's Machinations is still a thing. But to this day, I still get people talking to me about black-red burn. And this would be a great commander for a deck like that. It'd be really good reach if you wanted it. And it would get huge over the course of the game. And it would play pretty well with all of your burn spells. So I think this is really, really cool for Commander players and nobody else. But at least it's a fun card, and we get to check up on the Cinder Clan. they're apparently doing all right. But anyway, next is Dark Bargain. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for an instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the other into your graveyard. Dark Bargain deals 2 damage to you. I actually really like this. I hate that it costs 4 mana. A lot of black cards that do something similar to this cost 3 mana. But this is definitely better than those. The instant speed is really sweet, and the better than anticipate that you get for your two life is incredible. That's incredible. So, you know, looking at the top 3 and getting 2 of them is great card selection and card advantage. In this case, and you get to fuel in the graveyard strategies that you're running. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's possible, since you're putting the card in your graveyard here, that the card has Eternalize, that you can get it back with Scarab God, or a number of other things you can do with your graveyard in Standard alone. So this could just be straight up like drawing 3 cards. If you dump an Eternalized creature into your graveyard off of a Dark Bargain, you've kind of drawn 3 cards off of it. So I love this. I'm not sure how much play it ends up seeing, but it is instant speed, and it is ridiculous card selection, so I wouldn't put it past, like replacing Glimmer of Genius. And I've already said that about a couple of cards. You know, the new Into the Royal in blue could replace Glimmer, but this also has a shot at it, because you really don't see something like this every day, and it might be worth the 2 damage. But we're going to move on to the Eldest Reborn here. It's 5 mana. It's 4 and a black for a saga. When it enters the battlefield and you put that first lore counter on it, each opponent sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. Then, turn 2, you put your second lore counter on it, and you have each opponent discard a card. Third turn it's in play, you put that third pretty lore counter on it, then you sacrifice it, and put target creature or planeswalker from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Well, this does 3 things that a lot of decks probably want to do. You know, it's board control in a way, it's hand control, which is card advantage, by the way. You got rid of a card in their hand, and you got rid of a creature on the board, or a planeswalker even. And it only costs you 1 card in your hand, so that's card advantage right there. And it gives you even more card advantage when you get whatever they sacrificed, or, you know, something even better out of their graveyard, or even your graveyard. So the card is really flexible, does a lot of stuff, but end of the day, it is sorcery speed and it costs 5 mana. So I'm not seeing it. It's really slow. Turns 7 at the earliest by the time you get something out of their graveyard. Or yours. I'll say that again. But I don't know, guys. I don't think making them sack a dude on turn 5 is going to be amazing unless you've had amazing board control up to that point. I just think that it's incredibly slow, but any less than that, 4 mana, it probably would have been a ridiculous card. So, I mean, they probably had to cost it that much for how much card advantage you're getting and the spread of stuff that it does. Yes, it does 3 very powerful things, but I think it's costed way out of the market. So I would not expect to see this too often, unless I'm just way off base. Speaking of, here's another card that kind of fits that same description, it's sad to say. This is Urgoros, the Empty One. It's 6 mana. 4 and 2 black for a 4/3 legendary Specter. We get a legendary Specter. It's got flying, and when it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card at random. If that player can't, you draw a card. Okay, so that's a really cool take on Hypnotic Specter, and it costs twice what Hypnotic Specter did. I think Wizards straight up overvalues this ability, even if this is the best form of this ability. I'll give them that. You know, not only is the discard at random, but you know, if you've run them dry of cards or it's really late in the game, you can get card advantage off of it. But I still don't think it's good enough. At 6 mana and it's only got 3 toughness, you can Lightning Strike this 6 drop? I don't think so, guys. This is just not quite good enough, especially for 6 mana. I want my Flyers to be a little bit bigger than that. I mean, it's just slightly too fragile to be as much as it is. But we're going to keep going. Let's settle the score here. This is 4 mana. 2 and 2 black for a sorcery. Boo. Exile target creature. Put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. Well, something tells me that this at some point during development was an instant, and then they just completely killed it by making a sorcery. I mean, this is going to be in the same format as Vraska's Contempt, and if you've got access to Contempt, it's just the much better card. I don't see why you'd ever play this, but in Limited, it might be a beast. Other than the fact that you'll very likely not have a Planeswalker in Limited, it's still exile a creature for 4 mana with possible gravy, so you'll take it in Limited every time, but I really don't see why you'd play this. Even if you're playing a Super Friends deck or a deck with, 8 Planeswalkers, you would definitely play Contempt over this, so No, sir. No, I reject it. I reject it. We'll move on to Whisper, Blood Liturgist. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a legendary human cleric. It's a 2/2, and you can tap it, sack 2 creatures, and return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. Well, it's a Hell's Caretaker. That's just worse. That's just like way worse. It's legendary. You have to sack 2 guys, but at least you can still sack it. That's kind of cool. But I don't like it. I want so badly to like this, and I'm sure that there's some kind of crazy interaction in Standard that nobody has apparently seen yet. I haven't thought of anything myself, and Reddit or comments on Salvation or Mythic Spoiler, I just haven't seen a great interaction with this, other than people kind of pointing out that like Siege Gang Commander is also in this set. It'd be a great way to lock up a game if you had 1,000 turns to do it, but you just don't. So I'm not sure how great this card's going to be, but this could be a pretty fun commander, which is the case with a lot of these. Now, this one, though, you could say that about, but I think this card might actually have the realness behind it. This is Demon Lord Locke. It's a funny name. It's 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 6/6 legendary Elder Demon. Sweet creature type. It's got flying and trample like an Elder Demon should. And when it enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Then put that card into your hand. If the card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat this process. Demon Lord Locke deals 1 damage to you for each card put into your hand this way. Okay, so if you get, a Vraska's Contempt or a Scarab God or something when it enters the battlefield, then you'll get to draw a second card. And it will deal 2 damage to you, but probably worth it for a 6/6 flying trample and some card advantage. And it gives you card advantage no matter what, or at least it replaces itself in your hand no matter what. Really good with blinking and stuff like that. I mean, this is obviously very good, and I think that this is a case of being pushed at 6 mana. This is what I want 6 mana to look like. The penalty for making a bargain with this particular demon is not actually that bad. It's only going to deal 1 damage or maybe 2 or 3, but if it does deal 2 or 3 damage to you, you're probably perfectly fine with that because you just got crazy amounts of cards off of this. It's a great reanimation target. I mean, absolutely good. Stellar reanimation target in the upcoming Standard. Again, I think if you're going to spend 6 mana on your huge dude, this is how you do it. So I'm not saying that the card sees day 1 play in Standard or anything, but I think there's a possibility this card is much better. Good players have a habit of looking at 6 mana cards and being like, oh no, next, that's bad, unless it's a Planeswalker. But this, I think, deserves a second look. This is not just this is garbage 6 mana creature with a bunch of, wall of text on it. This is actually pretty decent looking to me. But we'll move on. Little gushing there, but we'll move on to Fallon Soothsayer, which is really hard to say. Fallon Soothsayer makes you, it's going to try and make you sound like you have a lisp. But anyway, it's 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/3 fungus with 2, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. Now, this is pretty expensive. 4 mana is a lot to pay for this creature in the first place, and then 2 to activate its sack ability. That is also a lot. But in draft and, other limited formats like Sealed, this will be a great mana sink. It'll be maybe a decent way to eke out a late game advantage, especially if you have a bunch of small dudes. It'll be a great way to chump block your guy, and then since your dude's going to die anyway, you just sack it and draw a card. So I think that this has some cool limited applications, but I really don't think that this will touch Standard either at the end of the day. I mean, it's nice to have another sack outlet, but I think that we actually have stuff that just is better than this already, even though drawing a card is very, very tempting. I just think that the total package costs a little bit too much to be truly efficient. So I'll move on to Demonic Vigor here. This is just 1 black mana for an aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. When enchanted creature dies, return that card to its owner's hand. Now, honestly, at first glance, I was a little bit high on this. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but really Supernatural Stamina's in the format until the fall, and that's just way better. I don't see too many situations where this is better than Supernatural Stamina. I mean, it gives a permanent boost to your creature, but I just don't think it's worth trading for instant speed and the ability to do it as a combat trick, and I think that Stamina is just more flexible, and I don't think you want 8 copies of Supernatural Stamina in your deck, so I don't know. I don't know, guys. I think it's decent in limited. I'll say that much. If you're going to play an R in limited, this is right up there, but I don't know. Unless I'm missing something ridiculous, this isn't the new Rancor or anything, so fie on that. But we'll move on to Drudge Sentinel here. This is a nostalgic callback. It costs 3 mana, 2 and a black, for a 2/1 Skeleton Warrior with, this is funny, pay 3, tap Drudge Sentinel, it gains indestructible until end of turn. So effectively, regenerate is back. It just doesn't say regenerate. It's no longer a keyword ability, which in a way is sad. Like, to me, this is the final death knell of regenerate. As a keyword ability, kind of hurts my heart in a set that's supposed to warm my heart in a nostalgic way. It hurts a little bit. But this is effectively regenerate, but that doesn't make the creature very good. Callbacks to Drudge Skeletons aside, it's just not fantastic, and usually something like this would be ridiculous in sealed. That's probably the format it's best in, but still, you know, like in draft, you're probably looking to build a more cohesive deck than just a 3-mana 2/1 that you have to sink a bunch of mana into before it gets decent at all. I don't know, guys. I think that this is fine in limited, yes, because creatures like this usually are fine in limited, but I mean, I don't expect it to see, I wouldn't, no one should expect to see any constructed play, but I don't know. I hoped that our callback to regenerate would be a little cooler than this, like a troll ascetic over Drudge Skeletons, but no. We won't get that. We won't get that. But we will get our final black card. I feel like this one flew by, you guys. But anyway, I actually have kind of a good little bit to say about this guy. This is Torgar, Famine Incarnate. It's 8 mana. It sounds like a lot, but we'll get there. 6 and 2 black for a 7/6 avatar. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. When Torgar, Famine Incarnate enters the battlefield, up to one target player's life total becomes half of their starting life total, rounded down. All right, so I love this, and it feels like I'm being tricked by Galta again. This feels oddly reminiscent of Galta, where like, oh, these are the ways you get it down on turn 2 or 3. But there are ways definitely to do it in this format. First of all, Llanowar Elves is back, so like multiple Llanowar Elf draws will get you there pretty easily. And yeah, you can sacrifice 3 dudes really early in the game with things like Servo Exhibition. There's plenty of ways to do it and get this down on turn 3. But to be honest, just sacrificing 2 guys and playing it for 4 mana is also really reasonable, more than reasonable. Paying 4 mana and a couple of creatures for your 7/6 seems pretty dope, especially with that enter the battlefield trigger. You can use it either if you get this late and you actually have the mana to play it, or you only have to sacrifice 1 creature. You get this late, you can pseudo reset your own life total with it. You go back up to 10. Or obviously, if you get this really early in the game, you can just put your opponent at 10 and they're staring down the barrel of a 7/6 shotgun. So that also seems pretty hot. And there are multiple ways, even just in standard, to do it. Not only do we have Llanowar Elves, but we got the new Mox Amber, so we've got more mana acceleration. I was trying to brew up like a black-green, pseudo-elves shell that just gets to Torgar super fast as an additional option. And I think that might actually work, There's just maybe 6 different shells that I could imagine this dude in right now, whether it's black-green or black-white. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the Torgar. So I really like this. I'm going to try to get this to work just as much as we all tried to get Galta to work. And Galta still sees very, very sparing play, but not as much as we thought she would. But this is a completely different card than Galta. Completely different card than Galta, and I think it might go the distance, although the big con, of course, is that if your opponent is able to counter this, you are done. That is a ridiculous blowout. You just sacrifice 2 or 3 guys, and your opponent countered this, because it's an additional cost. It's just like Cathartic Reunion. They counter your reunion, you lose those cards, you don't draw any. So that would be really feel bad to get this essence scattered. Because that would essentially lose you the game. So there is that to worry about, but outside of it getting countered, this card looks absolutely crazy to me, and we're definitely going to try to make it. We are all going to try to make this work as much as we possibly can. And it's possible, We not only do we have stuff like multiple turn, multiple Llanowar Elf starts, Servo Exhibition, but we also have like Dread Wanderer, Scrap Heap Scrounger. There's a bunch of stuff that really mitigates this downside. So I am interested to play with this thing and see what kind of ridiculous garbage we can do with it. So I'm excited. I am excited for Famine Incarnate, and that is actually all the cards for Black. These have been taking a long time to talk about and move through, but I feel like this one went really fast. So let me know if I missed anything. That is definitely a possibility. If I missed any interactions or combos, or I just didn't talk about something, then make sure you go down there in the comments. Let us know all that stuff. It's an important time to comment, because we're all trying to work through this together and sort of figure out what this set is. So make sure you comment if I didn't mention something or if I got something wrong. Again, haven't had all the time in the world to look at these, so it's possible I've just gotten something 100% wrong. So correct me if I did down there. But in any case, pretty sure that's all I got for this one, but stick around for the spiel if you can. First of all, support my sponsor, TCG Player. There's a link down there for them. You can get Dominaria sealed product already from them, and if you're interested, you can also peruse singles prices on a lot of these cards from the leak if you're interested in what these are going for on pre-order. You can do that too. Just click the link in the description. You can also, if you feel like it, subscribe to the channel. I hope you do, because we've got, a few more of these videos coming out. We've obviously got red and green, and then artifacts and colorless cards and stuff. So subscribe if you haven't done that for the content, and you want to also be here after we get done with this, because then it'll be effectively brew season. We're going to start trying to put together some ideas for Dominaria Standard pretty soon. So hit the bell for notifications. You can like the video if you like the video, and follow me on Twitter at SBMTG Dev. And finally, consider possibly throwing me $1 a month, just $1, on Patreon. That's all I ask of you, and I will let you know what decks we're doing the day before we do them. So do all that stuff, and I suppose I will catch you cats tomorrow with Red. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.